All right, I will call the meeting to order. Welcome to our Williamsport City Council meeting. It's Thursday, October 26th, 2023. We're treating transit to third floor. Please rise for the invocation by Councilman Randy Allison, followed by the flag salute.
Heavenly Father, we're here tonight to do the city's business, to conduct ourselves through these issues, Lord, and they're important things. Lord, we need wisdom and understanding and cooperation to do the best for our city and its citizens. And we're going to be working on all of this as October comes to a close and we come into the budget. We pray for your wisdom and guidance tonight. Lord, at the same time, we look at things transpiring around us, Lord, in our world, in our country. Lord, we see that there are some dark and perilous times right now. Father, we pray for those who are suffering, for those who are in troubling situations, Lord God, that we can't imagine. And I'd just like for all of us to take a moment of silence for what's happening around our world and the things that have happened in Maine and just the spirit that seems to be loose right now. And let's give those who have lost their lives a moment of silence. Amen. Thank you, Lord.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we are going to, we're going to jump around here in a minute. Item 3, approval of city council meeting minutes from October 12th, 2023. Is there a motion and a second? So moved. Second. Motion and a second. Any comments or questions on the minutes? Here you can see none. Mrs. Frank on the motion for the minutes.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy, Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. We're going to switch items 5 and 4. We're going to go to item 5, a discussion on stop signs at Campbell Street. I'll let the mayor introduce this, but essentially, I think the goal here is we want to make sure the public has an opportunity to address the city related to some of the stop signs that have been put up and are going through a study. I'll let you speak to it quickly,
Sure.
Mr. Mayor.
Yep. Good evening, President Yoder, Vice President Katz, members of council administration. For this item here, you have stop signs at the intersection of Campbell and Vernon, and also at the bottom of Campbell Street Hill. This is similar to what we did a few months back at a different area where it was during Public Works, I believe, where we had both sides come and speak in favor or against, and then ultimately make a decision based off PennDOT regulations and other factors that we do. So we're at this point again. It was a 90 day period that we have had the stop signs up, and clearly we have some folks here from the public, I would imagine, both in favor and against the stop signs. So that's where we are this evening. Before we did Public Works tonight, we're doing it here at City Council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What I think we'll try to do, I'll try to follow informally just what we do for the name's escaping me, a public hearing. right? I think we'll try to organize it affirmative and against. So what I'll do is I'll open up the floor for anybody that's in favor of the stop signs being in place on Campbell Street. Please come up, state your name and address for the record. And under the guidelines that we have for those meetings, we do a 3-minute. And so we'll follow the same case here. Thank you very much. Can you make sure the mayor gets a copy of this?
Thank you.
I also have a poster, if we can find a way to put it up, so everybody can see what the council is seeing. My name is Richard Carlson. I reside on, excuse me, on Campbell Street. And one of the proponents for the stop signs being placed on Campbell Street. The overriding factor when we were thinking about how to manage traffic on Campbell Street was the safety of the children and the people who use Campbell Street. Between Hawthorne and Belmont, there's 11 kids, school age or younger, on that street. And as you know, Campbell is a heavily trafficked area. We have UPMC, we have the Williamsport home, we have what I refer to the Upper Campbell area that uses that street all the time. As you look through the presentation I gave you, you'll look at some of the visions, some of the views of Campbell Street from different angles. One of them is if you're going north up Campbell Street, stop at Hawthorne, you cannot see over the horizon the road down Campbell Street. That is a real safety issue. As you move forward to Vernon, you have the same issue, but it's not as bad as it was before. So what we're trying to accomplish with these stop signs, and in fact, what the stop sign at Vernon has done, it has significantly slowed traffic going north up Campbell Street, forcing them to stop at Vernon and then proceed on to Belmont. Either they go left or right. So that's one of the issues of going north up Campbell Street, and why we wanted the stop sign at Vernon to break that traffic. If you want to spend an afternoon or an evening, particularly at either at 7:30 in the morning or 5 o'clock at night, you can come sit on my porch and watch the traffic. Some of it is horrendous. The other issue and the other stop sign is a stop sign that we requested. Let me go back. We did not request a specific stop sign at the base of the hill of Upper Campbell at Belmont. That was a suggestion that the mayor made when we met with him. It is not, in my opinion, the ideal solution, but it does work, because coming down that hill, if you've been on that hill and you take that right turn onto Campbell, if you look at the pictures I gave you, that is a slalom course. Traffic comes down that hill at a high rate of speed, comes down around that curve. And like I said, there's 11 kids right on that block that are at risk. And we also have the dog walkers. We have the family walkabouts. We have the UPMC walkers. And we have property that's at issue. Now, that hill also poses a danger to Belmont. I can't speak for the Belmont residents, but that is an issue. If you've driven west on Belmont, you go through the S curves up there, traffic coming down that hill is an issue. So it's my position and position of many of my neighbors that we retain those two stop signs because they work in tandem, breaking the flow of traffic coming down the hill from upper Campbell Street. You break that traffic. We try to break that traffic coming around that curve at Belmont. And then once they come around that curve, as you see in the pictures, you get a clear view of the stop sign at Vernon. And you know you have to slow. It works. Doesn't work for everybody because there are the usual suspects that just think stop signs, speed limits, and red lights are just a mere suggestion.
Thank you.
So the last page of the presentation I gave you shows an alternative solution to the stop sign at Belmont. Now, no question, that hill is dangerous. It is just dangerous. It's dangerous in inclement weather. We all know that. What I proposed is to square off that corner at Belmont and Campbell Street, take out that slalom curve, put that stop sign there. It's not going to solve all the problems from the folks up on the hill, I'm sure, but it will create that break in traffic coming back down Campbell Street.
Thank you, sir.
Any questions?
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak in the affirmative or in favor of the stop signs on Campbell Street? You're welcome to come up to the podium. State your, there were two of you that raised your hand. I noticed the woman in the back first. You're welcome to come up, state your name and address for the record, please. And welcome this evening.
Good evening. My name is Linda Crockett. I live at 1550 James Road in Williamsport. I have lived there for almost 36 years. I'm here to discuss with you about the stop sign placed in the lower part of Campbell Street. You have not been on Campbell Street. It is very, very hilly. I was most pleased to see a sign placed there since the road has many young people and older people coming down from over the, oh, okay. Have you been able to hear me otherwise?
I have, yeah.
I'm here to discuss with you about the stop sign placed in the lower part of Campbell Street. If you have not been on Campbell Street, it is a very steep hill. I was most pleased to see a sign placed there since the road has many young people and older people coming down from over the hill, driving fast, and young people with skateboards and skates too. Stop signs to me mean safety. I hope to see a sign there forever. When you stop at the sign, you can go straight to Belmont Drive. You can turn on Belmont Drive to the right or left. If you make a right, you are on Campbell Street. I do not want to see anybody injured or killed. We have a lot of trucks, a lot of people going up and down Campbell Street, and if you haven't been there, you need to go see how steep it is. And in the wintertime, it's very dangerous. A stop sign there, to me, is needed. I hope you will consider keeping the sign. It is for safety. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. There was another in favor. You're welcome to come to the podium. And again, state your name and address for the record, please, and we'll have 3 minutes. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. My name is Dave Bauer and my address is 1420 Campbell Street. And my wife and I live right before the stop sign on Belmont and Campbell. And one of the things, I don't want to reiterate what Richard said, but Hawthorne Avenue, that stop sign, people go through that like it's not even there. And therefore, this stop sign at Vernon slows them down. Secondly, the stop sign at the bottom of Campbell, that S curve you talk about, cars are allowed to park on both sides of the streets, and that's very dangerous. And I've seen people come off that hill, and if there's kids, and there's like Richard said, there's children riding bikes up and down there now. You know, when we first moved in, there were no young people, but now there are. And that was all of us, I think, that have spoken tonight. That was our main concern about these kids. Okay, because you know kids and they're active kids, which is good. All right. So thank you for listening to me, and I appreciate, you know, the city working with us with the stop signs. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anybody else that would like to speak in favor of the stop signs? Okay, anybody that wishes to speak in opposition to the stop signs, there's 1, 2, I'm guessing 3. Ms. Nasberg, I saw you first. Back corner can follow, and then over here. And if you would state your name and address for the record for formality,
name
we'd
is-
appreciate it.
How's that work? Okay.
Yep, you're good. Thank you.
All right, my name is Catherine Nasberg. I live at 1501 Glen Echo Road in Williamsport. And I did a little research and I went to the PennDOT manual on uniform traffic control. And part of what I want to talk about are the criteria for stop signs. So I'm going to do a little reading. Please try to follow along with me. Stop signs are one of the most common traffic signs and are also one of the most misused. A stop sign is intended to assign right of way at an intersection locations. However, they are often misused to address speeding concerns. Fortunately, there are warrants which provide guidance for the proper and effective placement of stop signs. And there are 5 warrants, which are basically guidelines. I have a copy of this, Mr. Yoder, for your file. So, but I'm sure your streets and parks people know that. So I want to go on to the improper use of stop signs. And I'm quoting again from this Pennsylvania Department of Transportation. Unfortunately, stop signs are commonly placed in an effort to control speed on local streets, even though the MUTCD, which stands for the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control, which I will give you, states that stop signs should not be used for speed controls. Many people believe that forcing motorists to stop at each intersection will decrease the overall speed on the road. However, studies show that stop signs only reduce the speed immediately adjacent to the sign. Many drivers accelerate between the intersections to make up for lost time at the stop sign. Engineering studies indicate that inappropriate installation of extra stop signs may cause additional problem, such as more rear end collision, which we've sort of alluded to, a redistribution of traffic onto side streets, the wastage of fuel, and drivers ignoring inappropriate signs. This again is a PennDOT publication. So I have lived on off of Campbell Street for nearly 25 years. I am unaware of any auto crash records or bodily injury records on anything. Proponents of the stop sign are relying, in my opinion, on anecdotal information. Just because somebody says something, that doesn't always mean that it's true. I'm unaware of documentation to support the suppositions of accidents or bodily injuries. Additionally, I have asked for the engineering study, which I don't know was ever conducted. The Manual on Uniform Control offers 5 warrants, 5 guidelines. The proponents of the stop sign have met none of the criteria. On the other hand, the implementation of a stop sign at the corner of Campbell and Valamont poses a risk of sliding residents in cars sliding into each other on icy or inclement weather. I don't know if you're aware, but last year, one of the city trucks plowed into the wall of one of my neighbors. The hill is very steep and very dangerous in the winter. Finally, and this is a quote, I want council and the city to be aware and on notice that according to the Manual of Traffic Control, improper signing and ignoring the warrants, i.e. guidelines, creates dangers for both drivers and the responsible municipality. This is a quote. In addition to unwarranted and substandard traffic control devices that contribute to a crash can sometimes be used as grounds to award judgment against the agencies involved in a legal dispute.
Thank you, Ms. Nasberg.
Thank you.
Would you drop those with Ms. Frank, the copies, if you have hard copies? That would be helpful. Thank you. There was a gentleman in the back on my right that I believe wanted to speak in opposition. You're the second person I saw. If you would state your name and address. Welcome, sir. The podium is yours. You have 3 minutes.
My name is Mike Goodman. I live at 1672 Graham Road. I've lived there since 1996. Been up down the hill a million times, never had an issue. That hill at the bottom, the only issue I do have in the winter is you guys get a little late, maybe don't put some salt on it, it gets slippery. And when you come down that hill and you go, first of all, when you stay on Campbell, you're not even changing roads. We're Campbell up there, that's Campbell down there. You have a house on the corner that has nothing but cars parked up and down the sidewalks all the time. It cuts down on visibility, also gives you some nice targets when you come down that hill and you can't stop and you are sliding into the intersection, you're going to hit those cars. I've had problems with people blowing the stop sign at Valmont and coming into my lane before the stop sign was there. No enforcement, no like anything to even enforce the stop signs are already there. So the third stop sign on that intersection is going to do absolutely no good. The one at Vernon, I don't get at all. You have sidewalks. I go there every day. There's people walking on the sidewalks. They're out of the road. There's no real reason to stop at an alley between two main streets. It's the only one in the city that I know of. And I don't get why either one of those signs are necessary. You're wasting fuel. You're going to cause a problem coming down Campbell and Valmont. That's all I can really say. It's just a bad idea.
Thank you, sir. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak in opposition? Name, address for the record in 3 minutes, and welcome this evening.
Good evening. My name is Emily Erdl. I live at 1672 Oak Ridge Place, which is up off of Campbell Street Hill. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the stop sign at the bottom of Campbell Street Hill and tell you a little bit more of the story that Mrs. Nasberg alluded to from last winter. So obviously coming down the hill in the winter, it does get pretty slippery. It's really, if we get any form of snow or ice, it becomes a hazard. So last winter, in one of the ice storms that we had, there were multiple cars that were sliding off the road coming down the hill. They could have been going 5 or less, and they were sliding off the hill. It was so bad that I know the city sent police officers up to stop people from coming up and down the hill so that people would stop sliding off, and people were stuck in their cars on the side of the road on the hill. The salt truck that Mrs. Nasberg alluded to that came up, they tried to salt and plow, they slid off the road. So that just gives you a glimpse into the kind of conditions we're dealing with in the winter. So my concern is if we come down the hill and we have to stop, sometimes it's literally not possible. So not only is it residents, we also have a school bus that comes down that way. I think also about the garbage trucks, the different bigger vehicles that come down that road. And my concern is if they can't stop and they blow through the intersection of Valmont, is that someone will get T-boned and someone will get very injured. So thank you for your time. I do have something I'd like to turn in for a neighbor of ours, Alan Wilcox. He wasn't able to be here tonight.
You can drop it off with the city clerk. She'll
Okay.
take a copy of it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak in opposition to the stop signs on Campbell Street? Yes, if you would come up, state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes and welcome this evening.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Andrea Goodman. I live at 1672 Graham Road. My husband and I built our home 27 years ago. We've lived there. It's wonderful. I have also done a little bit of research because in addition to just feeling like it's a nuisance, I feel the stop signs are making more of a safety issue by being in place. So installation of unwarranted traffic control devices breed disrespect for such devices. They cause delays, they hinder traffic flow, and they lower fuel efficiency. The intersection is a low volume, low speed intersection with no history of crashes and no visibility concerns. I would like to request a review of the stop signs in that area because I believe the review would find that these signs do not justify the use of a stop sign. A stop sign should not be used to simply calm traffic. Guidelines outlined in the Manual for Uniform Traffic Control Devices that is published by the United States Department of Transportation Federal Highway Administration states a stop sign is warranted when at an intersection of a less important road with a main road, drivers may not follow the normal right-of-way rule. That is 23 Code of Federal Regulations, Part 66, Subpart F. When used for speed control, stop signs encourage casual observance, which decreases intersection safety overall. That is all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak in opposition to the stop signs on Campbell Street? Name and address for the record. And 3 minutes. Welcome, sir.
Hello, Mike Chillington, 1601 James Road. I lived on Campbell Street for 2 years, and now I live on 1601 James Road for the past 3 years. We have 3 physicians on Campbell Street, and the children are there, but each of those residents have a half an acre to an acre plus of land. The children, I'm up and down Campbell Street maybe 15, 20 times a day from James Road, back and forth. I've never seen a child in the street. There's no stickball playing in the streets. The children have all that yard to play in, and I've never seen any type of speeding on Campbell Street when I lived on Campbell Street. And then in the wintertime of last year, when we did have that ice storm, the streets and parks trucks were trilling down, flying down, sliding down. And the police were called, and they halted all the traffic going down. And I did witness that one truck crash into my neighbor's stone wall. And the thing is, I just think that there should be a study done, or the decision made tonight to remove them once and for all. That's all. Thank you.
You, sir. Any other comments opposed to the stop signs? Okay. Mayor Slaughter, Scott, anything you need to add to the discussion? Okay. Any comments or questions from members of council? This is discussion only. If I recall, I think that we are tracking traffic through there, and we'll make a determination, I think relatively soon, like within the next couple weeks, based on that, following PennDOT guidelines, et cetera. So Scott, I know that you've been fielding calls. I think you're keeping some of the documentation for that. All of this will be able to support that as well. So I know that you've been working through that. I appreciate that very much. Thing that sticks out to me, regardless of if these stay or go, there's definitely a speed problem in town. So I live on a corner lot 2 blocks off of Grampian. And every time we call the police, when they're able, they send somebody out. I bet you they ticket 6, 7, 8 people within a few hours, right? Within a day or so. No, I mean, it doesn't address the problem, right? So, you know, there's a lot of good points on both sides of the issue here, but I think that's the commonality here. There is a speeding problem, right? Whether a stop sign is going to fix it or not. Legally, there's a lot of questions there, but we need to be looking at that specifically at a number of other areas throughout the city as well. And I believe, Mayor, you are looking at that. We had some quick conversations about the whole stop sign
Radar.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, that
was just going to be what I was mentioned quickly, is that as far as radar, Pennsylvania is the only state that does not allow local PD to use radar. So we're working on that in Harrisburg. There's a number of not just mayors, police chiefs, et cetera, that have been advocating down in Harrisburg. That bill's been there for a long time. So again, I don't have obviously any control over that, but it just to highlight as far as the speed control, the radar control, our local PD cannot use, and the techniques they are able to use are so vastly outdated. I think Councilman Palizzi highlighted that previously, but they are very outdated in timing and all of that. Radar is not permitted. PSP can use it, but local PD cannot. So just to add up to your point.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely concerns in those that are in favor of it. I get the concerns of those that are opposed to it. You know, there's got to be something that appeases both. I think with this one, Miss Mealy.
Well, I think I would also want to address the sort of larger issue as that Adam brought up, which is and actually speeding, Derek, is only a chunk of the issue. And I would say that if we can't look at radar control of speed in the city, I walked down West 4th Street the other day, and somebody ran every single red light before I got to it. I mean, we're talking, I passed 4 red lights and watched motorists run through each of them. Somebody almost hit my dog running a red light across 4th Street on Elmira the other day. Like, she made it into the intersection 10 feet ahead of me, and somebody came across and swerved to avoid her as he ran the red light. So there are, but to that point, I think part of what both cadres of people, both those for and against the stop signs in these locations mentioned, was that people regularly disregard the stop signs we already have there. And to me, that makes 2 cases. One, we need to be enforcing the traffic measures that we have in place in the city. If we can't enforce the speed limits, we can enforce red light and stop sign infractions, and those are rampant. And I probably commit those as, you know, I think all of us probably do it because it is something that everybody is doing. And the only way to stop that is with enforcement and with, you know, a marketing campaign, if nothing else, saying, hey, these are important things and somebody's going to get killed. But, you know,
No, you're good.
okay.
Sorry.
The secondary point, the person who was going to speak tonight, well, never mind. We had received a letter a few weeks ago on council, and I think the administration had received it as well, suggesting in place of stop signs at Vernon and Campbell, traffic humps, those broader traffic slowing devices, not traffic. Well, not quite. Speed bumps are generally narrower, and humps are larger, so that they're a little less of a threat to your car, but they definitely slow down traffic. That I don't know what the solution is, and I don't know whether I think the stop signs are more effective, and I hope that the city study supports one route or the other. But I would encourage us to think about traffic humps as a traffic slowing measure throughout the city, not just in that location, because that is, nobody wants to take the bottom off their car. So everybody slows down for that, even if they're not going to stop for a stop sign. But Adam.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to add, I mean, you know, in talking with you, Chief Snyder, a couple of times, I mean, you talk about enforcement. I mean, it's people or technology, and you know, we don't have enough people as it is. From you know what I mean. So when you look at what other municipalities are doing across the country, there's a number of different tactics they're using. A lot of it's technology. I'm not going to sit here and say it does or doesn't work. John, we've talked a little bit about that informally, right? Whether it does or doesn't. We got to learn from what's good and what's bad, though, for sure.
Right. Can I make one further point
Yeah,
before I yield the
Mrs.
floor?
Katz.
This discussion triggered something else that I brought up previously, but Scott, I'm not sure I've had the conversation with you. I'd had it with the previous director of streets and parks. There is no stop sign at Scott Street where it intersects with Rose Street. And we've had at least one traffic incident there, if not more. I'd mentioned it years ago and sort of assumed it had been corrected. And then I drove past there the other day and there is still no stop sign there, no stop sign in either direction. And so you know, at least unless I somehow missed it, there wasn't one. So if we could look at that, that would be a good thing.
Mrs. Katz.
I think the one thing that was mentioned tonight was what the rules are through the government, through PennDOT, and those are the things that I think we should be studying. And Scott, you did a study on this to a certain extent, because these signs have been up for 90 days, right? And you do have a report really of what to do and what not to do at this point. So, you know, I think we have to, you know, use our judgment of what you've accomplished and also what the rules are. Going on about everybody blowing stop signs. I live 4 minutes away from my business, and all the stop signs, I think there's 4 of them. You don't know how many times they blow through it. Yeah. And I know exactly what you're going to say, Chief. We don't have the manpower to do this. We do have to come up with a solution somehow. When you look at the income that comes in, there's very few dollars that come in through fines. Okay, in situations like this. And the reason why is because of manpower. And, you know, we hear that all the time. So we've got to come up with a solution somehow, some way, that everybody is just ignoring lights and stop signs. For some reason, red doesn't mean anything to anybody anymore. So, you know, something has got to be done.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Katz. Any other comments, questions from council on the discussion? So the only other thing I would add is, I mean, you know, Mayor, Chief Snyder, Scott, you know, as you're looking at whether it's the infrastructure side of the issue, the public safety aspect of it, you know, if there's things that you need from us as you're diving into that, let us know. I think we'd like to be part of that in whatever way you deem appropriate, and how we can be supportive. But you know, we're looking to you to lead that, and I know you will. And we're here to support that.
There's lots of ideas.
Sure. Yep. Yep. Yeah, certainly understood. I mean, that's what you and I have talked a lot about, right? But you know, we got to work through it, whether we like it or not. More so when I mean that towards myself, right? Okay. Thank you all for Mr. Lubin. Yes.
The only thing I would note, Mr. Yoder, is that a petition to remove the stop sign, which is a multi-page petition, was given to the mayor, and he in turn gave it to the city clerk, just so it's part of a record.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. That's good to know as well. Okay. So what he said was the petition to remove the signs was delivered to the mayor. He gave a copy of that to the city clerk to include in the record. All right. I appreciate everybody coming, speaking, whether they're in favor of it or opposed to it. It's helpful for us to hear directly from you, right? We try to do that the best we can through our individual networks, committee meetings, what have you. But this direct medium here is certainly helpful. So we thank you all on both sides of the issue.
Any question? Sorry to interrupt you, but
Can you,
isn't your 90 days up on that already?
Scott, can you speak to that?
It is.
Okay. So what are the next steps on that? Okay. All right.
But when was the 90 days up?
No,
Like today.
today.
Is that correct? Today?
Okay.
Well, the 27th, I think,
Okay.
is the 90
So,
days.
so tomorrow,
I spoke to you.
tomorrow.
Yeah, I spoke to you back in June, July.
So if the
July,
27th
August,
is,
September. You put them up July 5th. I was
August,
away that
September,
week, and when I
October.
came back, they were done.
okay.
So.
So,
They're supposed to come down.
so based on if the 27th was the date, tomorrow, the 27th would be 90 days. So it sounds like you're getting together, you're kind of going through what you have, and we'll make a determination based on that, if they stay up or they come down. So we're at the 90 days. Okay. One more, and then we're going to continue through the agenda. Name and address for the record, please.
My name is Kathy Piccolo and I live at 1420 Campbell Street. And this whole idea of stop signs, actually, I started 3 years ago. We started to see the activity, and I know that many people that live at the top of the hill don't see that, but those of us on the block do see, especially the stop sign that comes down Campbell from onto Belmont. I know that there was a car accident. Lavecchio's car was hit. I think most of the neighbors on Campbell and Belmont were thrilled. I got thank yous for pushing the way that I did. And I do understand that there is protocol and there are legal ramifications to doing all of this, but I would have to ask, and Mayor Slaughter, you proposed several things that all sounded great. I would have to ask, for those of us that live on Campbell between Belmont and Hawthorne, what is the solution? We all know that everybody has problems that live above us. We think it's a great solution to have stop signs. And if they're removed because of petitions or legalese, then what are we supposed to do in our block when there's so many pedestrians that are walking along and they may not get hit, but children do tend to go into the street? skateboards, you name it. We've seen it happen. I mean, if you're not there, you wouldn't see it. So if it's speed bumps, I'm all for that. But I know a lot of people don't like them either. If it's, watch children's signs, Derek, thank you so much for doing that. Unfortunately, people didn't see them and they didn't slow down. I know one of your managers came up and timed the people that were flying down the hill onto Campbell. And he said, wow, one of your engineers. It's just, every problem has a solution. So what will the solution be if it's not stop signs? That's how I see it. Thank you so much. Appreciate everybody's help.
Thank you. Okay. We will continue through the agenda. If there are others that, if people hang out, you're welcome to speak at the very end of the meeting as well. If something comes up, you think of something else that you didn't think about during the discussion, there will be another opportunity if you desire it at the end of the meeting. We'll move to item 4, limited courtesy of the floor. This is another opportunity for others to speak of other items on the agenda. Ms. Crockett, you were on here. I suspect that you're good. Yep. Gotcha. Is Mark Marino out there? I do not think so.
I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, I don't either.
Do you know?
And then I know,
Pretty sure I do.
You don't see
I
them.
know Tabby Nasberg asked as well, but she left.
I think they
Okay.
all said their piece.
I don't think there is any other courtesy of the floor, and that's fine. That's perfectly fine. Okay, we will go in order for the rest of the agenda here. We'll move to item 6, Mrs. Frank.
An ordinance, a street vacation portion of the northern 132 7th Avenue in final reading.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Mr. Nar, good evening, sir.
Good evening, President Yoder and members of council. I've had no inquiries or no concerns regarding this and have nothing additional for them.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any comments or questions from other members of council? Hearing and seeing none, Mrs. Frank on the motion and second reading.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Item 7, Mrs. Frank.
An ordinance amending Article 131 of the codified ordinances of the city of Williamsport, setting the compensation of the city controller in final reading.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second, Mrs. Woodring.
Good evening, President Yoder, Vice President Katz, members of council. At the last council meeting, I submitted a request to amend the controller's salary ordinance because of an error. President Yoder asked to have the solicitors confirm the correction. The solicitors assured him everything was in order. Therefore, I am asking you to pass the ordinance for final reading.
Thank you, Mrs. Woodring. You sent your memo out to all of council, I believe. Did you all get that? Okay. Are there any comments or questions on final reading between the agreement between our solicitors or anything in general?
No.
Here you see none, Mrs. Frank, on the motion and second reading, please.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. We'll jump to item 11. I am so sorry. I completely slipped my mind.
Thank you, members of council, and the efforts of solicitors and the council. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Peg. Item 11, Mrs. Frank.
Resolution to accept the fiscal year 2019 audit.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second. Motion and a second, Mayor Slaughter.
Yes,
Welcome
good evening
again.
again, President Yoder, Vice President Katz, members of council administration. What you have before you is a resolution to accept the 2019 city audit. As you're aware, this was initially a few weeks ago. We discussed in finance, allowed a few additional weeks for council to digest the report. And then any questions that may arise out of that. and it's back on this week. It was reviewed once again in finance on Tuesday. And we do have Kim Stank here from ZA, Zelenkowski Askelrod, and as well as Tracy Rash as well from our finance team.
Hi, it's nice to see all of you in person.
You too. Sorry, it's
That's okay.
completely slipped my mind. So I meant to do right after. Anyway, welcome.
Thank you. So at this point, I think just asking if you have any additional questions.
This was reading finance, I think one more time. I'll turn it over to you, Ms. Mealy, on the commentary there. And then if there's any final questions on this.
Yep, finance, I think, I believe I started out in finance saying that I didn't think there were all that many more questions about this in finance, and then we had about a half an hour discussion anyway, just for the hell of it. And most of the discussion was not really as much related to the audit or the auditors as it was related to the approach that we're using for the next several years of the city's audits. Although I'll defer, did anybody have any? I don't recollect any specific questions related to the audit and finance that were real.
Not this year's.
Not this year's audit, yeah. So the thrust of it was that I think it seems as though the administration and to a certain extent council has kind of decided that we're going to treat 2019, 2020, 2021, 2020, and 2022 all as, if you will, lost years. It seems to me there was a film from like the 40s or the 50s called The Lost Years. And I don't know that that's a terrible idea. But the point that I'm making is we're sort of saying, well, we don't exactly know what was happening financially within the city in those years. We're going to try and get enough of a clean slate at the end of 2022 to know that 2023 is a good solid budgeting, and try and get as clean an audit opinion as we can for 2023, but not delve too hard into those missing audits. Which will result, and I think no matter what we do, the likely end result for 2019 through 2022 will be that Zelenkowski Axelrod will refuse to offer an opinion as to our financials. I guess is that the proper way? You will provide no opinion. You will have to provide a disclaimer of an opinion. Thank you. I keep forgetting the proper terminology. Anyway, saying that there's inadequate information to even say whether or not our books are accurate. To be clear, that is likely to be the end result, whether or not we put a bunch of effort into excavating the financials from those years or we don't. We're not likely to be able to get enough concrete resolution to some of the questions about how money was moved around between RVT and the city to get anything approaching a clean opinion from an auditor. That said, the decision that I think we're making is basically to say, well, that is what it is. And I don't know if that's the right decision or the wrong decision, but the one thing that we did discuss a little bit, at least in finance, was that we should think about that as a decision to make sure that that's what we want to do. If for some reason, well, to a certain extent, even whether or not that's the financial decision that we want to make for the city, if we want to do further investigation or try to get a little more clarity on some of the budgetary moves we made in those years, or even if we want the current auditing procedure for the next 3 fiscal years, followed by 2023, to move along at the pace that puts us in a position to have the 2023 audit finished by the end of 2024. We do not likely have enough of Tracy's time budgeted to accomplish that. And so I guess what I'm saying is a whole bunch of the discussion around these audits has revolved around the idea of the sooner we get to an audit that can be at least somewhat clean, that can at least say we know that 2023 was fiscally on track. We understand where the money went, where the money came from, and where it went. And we will treat, and where we can let the past begin to recede behind us in the rearview mirror. We know that we want to get there as quickly as we can, and getting there quickly Tracy says will not be happening on 1 day a week of her time, for one thing. And the benefits to getting there quickly are obviously that we are more quickly arriving at a financial position where we can borrow money, where we can satisfy lenders, where, where we are once again have a slightly more stable financial outlook. But to do it quickly, we will require more time, and to do a more in-depth analysis of where we've been financially would also require more time. And so I guess I thought there were sort of two twin thrusts of the discussion on Tuesday, but one of them was how are we treating these lost years? How are we looking at them from a fiscal perspective? Do we feel like there's any financial information we need out of those years that we won't be able to get by this strategy that we're currently taking? And just thinking about what that means, that we're kind of giving up on figuring out where the money was. That's not entirely true. We're not giving up on figuring out where the money was or where it went, but we're giving up on pinning down some of the numbers that we would ordinarily try to pin down. The other discussion that we had in finance related to the city's lending cap, which is, we believe, around $62 million, depending on how you look at our revenues for the last 3 years. Tracy has said then multiple times, of course, that those revenues are not audited. So, that lending cap could go up or down by a little bit, but our current debt is, by Tracy's count, I think at about 17 million. With the potential to be as high as somewhere in the low 20s, depending on the fallout of a few unresolved issues. So we clearly have a lot of debt space. So the other question that I asked at finance specifically was, that's as much debt as we are legally allowed to hold, because that's as much debt as we are presumed to be able to satisfy, to pay debt service on an annual basis. But is there a recommendation for how much debt a municipality of our size should have? I don't think there's no presumption that debt is a good thing, but is there a number over which it's not recommended that we go? And so I don't know, Tracy, if you got any insight on that in the.
I have not been able to find that yet, but I'm still trying.
Okay.
I thought you sent something earlier in the week that had something in there.
Well, that was the calculation.
Right.
The calculation.
DCD limits your debt to a certain, it's 250% of revenues. So
Yeah.
that, I mean, if you want to call that a recommendation, you could, but that's like going to buy a house and the realtor tells you this is how much you can afford. Right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So that was the debt calculation that you sent us.
that's correct.
I thought there was something else in there about a recommended level that you should have. Or should
see that.
No,
But
I'll send you the
but I could
link
be
to
wrong.
Laguta's website where they give you all the calculation information.
Gotcha. Okay. My bad. Thank you for the clarification. Anyway. Sorry, Liz.
No, that's fine. That was the other question to me. Obviously, we may or may not be in a position to borrow money currently anyway, but what is the sort of wise level for a city of our size? Tracy, our current debt service is about 2 million a year, right?
Sorry, I was working on the budget today, so I'm trying to remember. I
Yeah.
felt like it was 1.3, but I could be wrong on that. And Kim's going to pull out the audit right now, and that information is in your audit report.
But wouldn't it be 2019? I keep getting confused, of course, between
It
what's
gives, the
happening.
2019 audit gives you the debt service requirements for the next 5 years and then
Okay.
the future debt service. So that's what I'm looking for quickly. Sorry. There's the debt. Okay. About $1 million.
Okay.
Yep. I think it was
Really?
1.2 was what I was looking at today. I can confirm it with you.
Yeah, for some
Yeah.
reason I thought it was higher than that, but okay. I mean,
That's just long-term debt, like notes and bonds payable. That does not include leases.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what the audit shows.
All right. I have probably failed to summarize everything from the finance committee, so let me defer to other members of the finance committee.
Randy, Eric, anything to add?
I think she summarized it well.
Yeah.
Or maybe summarize would be an inaccurate term for what I just did. Yeah.
She covered it.
Yeah, there was just one other, there was, I
Yes.
think Councilwoman Mealy made a request for RVT audits.
Right.
Oh, well, I think we all did actually.
Yeah,
effectively.
the whole
Right.
committee, right. So I did reach out to RKL
Okay.
and they're working on that. And they
Okay.
said, yeah, once
Yeah.
it's,
I just asked for a briefing on the audit years that they'd completed and where they stood, because obviously,
Yeah.
while those are no longer incorporated in our financial statements through 2022, they
Should
were
be,
nonetheless a
yes.
part of our
Yeah.
financial outlook for 2022.
Yeah, and I know, I mean, I remember, so I had asked you a question, Tracy, about like not getting previous audits. It was before you were here, was RVTA specifically, because I think it was the 21-22 audit, the last one that we approved. I don't remember getting a copy of that. It was before you. And it was
So,
before we transitioned them over to an authority, so.
so I know they are currently in the process of completing their June 30, 22 audit.
Okay.
Prior to that, I saw that,
Yeah,
what's that? 1920, I believe was an adverse opinion, and that was brought before council as a draft, but I don't know where it went since then.
yeah, the last one that we saw was brought as a draft. We accepted it, just in the same way we're gonna do this. But I don't recall it getting the final
Yeah.
copy, or even getting like the final confirmation that it was sent, whatever. And I think we need that for record. So that was where the root of my question was.
Right.
So Mayor, if you're gonna talk to RVT, I don't believe we have that. We need that
yeah, I reached out to RKL and yep. So they're going to get it. Yep.
anyway. Okay. Any other comments or questions on the audit?
No.
To the point of time to get these next few years finished up, that is something I was kind of chatting with Tracy about that a little bit. I mean, I hope you don't mind me sharing a little bit of our conversation, because it kind of aligns with what Ms. Mealy was talking about. You talk about time. I mean, I think part of what we talked about was roughly not holding anybody to the time frame. I mean, I think if Tracy could focus on this for a month, I think that our auditor could have what they need to do the next remaining years, essentially.
So I am in the process of preparing 20 through 22 for each of the funds. I'm down to CDBG, home and general fund.
Yeah.
So, but with 1 day a week and budget, I just haven't been able to commit the time to keeping up with the audit and doing the software.
Yeah, my point in saying that is, I mean, I think there's a rough quantification of what we think it might take. So if we want to push for this to get done, I think we can roughly figure out what it roughly might cost us. And I think if that's something we want to get pushed and get done, I don't think it's a bad idea to look at that. We should do that and do that pretty soon. So, Ms. Mealy.
Tracy, you have 2 days available per week right now?
I'm
correct?
sorry.
Well, aren't you working 3 days a week in Wilkes-Barre?
No, Wilkes-Barre's finance director has been hired and I'm already out of there.
So you do have more time to offer us if we were
If you
looking for
need it,
more time.
yes.
Okay, all right. Sorry, last time we discussed this, you were booked. so
Yeah,
that was-
stretched a little
okay.
bit.
Okay, then that certainly would be something I'd support, so that at least however we're going to treat those remaining 3 budget years we need to audit, we do it quickly and get it out of the way so that we can move on to 23. I think would be a wise idea. And if there's any deep diving we can do in there, having a little bit of time to flesh that out wouldn't be a bad thing, I think. Mhm.
Yeah, so Mayor, I mean, I would say over the next couple weeks, I would look at, if we're gonna pay Tracy to focus on that over the next 30, 40 days, I would find the money out, not including legislative contingency, and bring it forward and let's chat about it and see if it's something we want to do. So
Yeah, we can.
Take a look at
We'll
it.
take a look at it and let you know.
Yep.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, here you see now Mrs. Frank on the motion for the resolution for the audit.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. We'll move back up to, thank you for being here. And again, my apologies, I completely forgot. Thank you. We'll move back up to item 8.
Resolution for letter of engagement with Kathleen M. Thomas Esquire.
Is there a motion and a second?
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second. Mr. Mackey, you are up, sir. Welcome.
Good evening, council, everyone here. So Nick Grimes, our previous treasurer, had appointed Kathy as an alternate tax officer for us, basically to act as a arbitrator in case there was any other disputes. She no longer works with High Sports and has since gone off on her own, which we would need a re-engagement letter just to go ahead and continue using her services if we were ever to need her in the future. This is more of a housekeeping item than anything else. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Kevin. This was reviewed in finance. Anything to add, Ms. Mealy?
This was reviewed in finance in the 10 minutes that I was running late. So Randy took care of this one.
Wow. Mr. Allison, anything to add from finance?
Not really. That was about the extent of the conversation.
Thank you, sir.
I think Eric can confirm that.
We got through finance very quickly with
Yeah.
that.
I know. And then I showed up with the damned audit.
And then she hijacked it all.
At least the beginning, Councilman.
That's right. Nothing to add.
Any other comments or questions from council members? Hearing you see none, Mrs. Frank on the motion for item 8.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Item 9, Mrs. Frank.
Resolution for letter of Markham LLP Accountants and Advisors.
Is there a motion in a second?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Mackey.
So this is another housekeeping item. Markham had acquired our previous auditor, which is McCarthy and Associates. And we're keeping the same staff we've been utilizing that Nick had appointed. Again, I love their services, just like I like Kathy. So again, this is just another housekeeping item, reappointing the same people, but under a different name.
Thank you, sir. Finance again, Randy.
Ditto.
Any other comments or questions from members of council? Hearing and seeing none, Mrs. Frank on the motion for item 9.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Item 10, Mrs. Frank.
Resolution authoring PSDLAF to act as settler.
Is there a motion in a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion in a second, Mr. Mackey.
So PISLAF, as their acronym say, is a alternate version of Pliget. This was actually contact given to me by Tracy and recommended. So we're just kind of using them as to compete with Pliget's rates whenever we have available. Currently, I think their rates are slightly higher. So in the future, when we start having some funds set aside, we can move some stuff over there and hopefully make a little more interest than we made this year and go from there. So again, in order for them to begin working with us, we do need to authorize them as a settler. And then from there, it's just going to be like a standard bank.
Okay. Finance,
Yes.
Mr. Allison.
We had a brief conversation about how much interest we had gotten in the past. I think that was about it.
Yep.
And that was,
Oh, you want the amount?
yeah,
As of October 2nd, we crossed $1 million in interest.
okay. So that's the pertinent issue in that one.
Yeah.
Yep.
Very good. Any other comments or questions? Very cool. Mrs. Frank on the motion for item 10 or item 10.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey, Mr.
Yes.
Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
We will move to item 12, Mrs. Frank.
Resolution authorizing the purchase of a sharp copier to the office of city clerk.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Motion is second. So this is a housekeeping item. So if you guys all remember earlier in the year, Janice's copier broke down. We bought her a new one. We used legislative contingency to do that. I had initially consulted with Norm. He was of the opinion, you're within the percentage threshold, you can authorize it, you're good to go. There's no formal action by council taken. Tracy had asked that we do a resolution to just make sure that we are, given the nature of the language of use of funds and legislative contingency. And talking with people, whenever that arose initially, everybody was kind of comfortable with it. So this is simply just and for auditing purposes to ensure we're in line after the fact passing this. So this is going to go to a committee, given the housekeeping nature. Any comments or questions on this item? Okay. Here you can see none. Mrs. Frank on the motion for item 12.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Mackey.
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi.
Yes.
Mr. Bider.
Yes.
Ms. Mealy.
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. We'll move to item 13, Mrs. Frank.
Resolution for a consulting agreement between the Williamsport Bureau of Police and PA Chiefs of Police Association.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second. Motion and a second. Assistant, I will get that out of my mouth. Assistant Chief Bolt, good evening, sir.
Good evening, President Yoder, Vice President Katz, members of council and administration. What you have before you is just a resolution for the consulting agreement between the Williamsport Bureau of Police and the PA Chiefs of Police Association to conduct our oral board examination as part of our promotions testing that we do pretty much every 18 months. We're required by contract to maintain a promotions list for the ranks of corporal, sergeant, lieutenant, and agent, and the current list is due to expire at the end of November. So this will make sure that we keep and maintain our list. It's $2,300 to do all 4 of the tests that they do, and they actually develop the tests and administer them here. So it's a standard agreement. Like I said, we do it every 18 months. And this agreement was reviewed by Austin.
Thank you, Assistant Chief Bolt. This went to Public Safety. Mr. Mackey.
This did not come to public safety.
It did not?
I canceled public safety.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
This was, again, pretty standard thing. It seemed unnecessary to round everybody up for what was going to be a 10-minute Zoom meeting. So I thought we could handle this here tonight.
You
So,
did.
yes.
That is correct. My bad.
So I have nothing further to add. Now, this is a pretty standard deal. We need to do this to align with the contract, and
that's correct.
Any comments or questions from other members then? Mr. Bider.
When a promotion is granted in the police department, what is the process? Just for my own curiosity, is that something that's done by a point system? Is it the civil service board that does that? How is that done?
It's done by the civil service. We actually maintain a civil service list, both for hiring and promotions. So our process for promotions is you have to have eligibility, and for the different ranks, there's different levels of eligibility, years of service, and previous ranks. Then we first start with a written test, which is actually going to be done tomorrow in this room for officers that are eligible to take it. Once those are scored, persons that meet the minimum threshold are able to move on to the oral examination, which is administered by the PA Chiefs of Police. Based on that combined score, then they're put in a ranked list. And when there is a position available for said ranks, then we will pick from that list through that. It's a civil service authorized list.
So thank you. And this kind of makes me ask another question then.
Yes.
So much like when you hire a new police officer.
Yes.
There are times when you look down that list which we've been presented with, where it might be the number 1 guy and then the number 5 guy gets hired on that list. And that's based upon availability, or is that based upon the job specifically?
So based on that list, we go through the ranked numbers. We go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. You'll see sometimes that we will go from 1, and then you'll see 2 or 3 or 4 won't be in it. And that could be for several different reasons. They could have, they could have denied taking the job. They could defer. They could actually be bypassed due to other issues with background investigations and things of that nature. So you'll sometimes see that people will not be accepted under that. And it's not that we're jumping them, it's because of situation.
Sure. And that's just my general curiosity as to how that works in the hiring process. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments or questions? Mr. Pelisi?
Thank you very much. I did just want to make sure we're all aware. Because the first time I read through this, I saw consultant shall be paid $2,300 per day. And my eyes about jumped out of my head. But then exactly immediately after it said it's just a 1-day process.
That is correct.
This only happens once a year, correct? Okay.
Actually, once every 18 months. So once we do this, should everything fall the way it should, we won't have to be back here until 2025.
I was about to start looking for a different career, so, but I just wanted to reaffirm that for everyone. That it's once every 18 months.
Any other comments or questions?
You say 2025, you'll be back with this?
18 months, hopefully from the date that this list is put into effect, which should hopefully be the end of November.
All right, I'm canceling that public safety meeting as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing and seeing none, Mrs. Frank on the motion for item 13.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Thank you, sir. We'll move to item 15. Oh, sorry, 14. Just kidding.
Resolution authorizing the purchase of a Mimicast email, comprehensive defense and secure messaging.
Is there a motion, a second?
So moved.
Second. Mr. Black, good evening, sir.
Good evening, everyone. What I have here is a proposal to purchase a software as a service from a company called Mimecast. They will be monitoring our email to make sure it's clean coming in and going out. There will also be with it security training for all of our users within the city. And also it offers a secure email for 35 users. And we can pick and choose who those 35 are as things get fluid. It's for a total of $13,022.30, and this will come out of contracted services.
Thank you, sir. This was reviewed in finance.
This was reviewed in finance and most of the discussion, I think, just sort of revolved around our ongoing sort of expenditures in terms of like tech contracts within the IT department, and how this specifically fills holes in our cybersecurity profile that will ideally enable us to continue to get cybersecurity insurance, and ideally reduce the cost of that insurance. Tracy, somehow the document.
She's not here.
She's gone. Okay.
It's a little over 16,000.
Okay, I was gonna say the document somehow corrupted so that I couldn't exactly tell whether it was the 30-some thousand or the 16,000.
Yeah.
That was our cybersecurity.
At least that's the number that I saw.
Cyber insurance, yeah. But anyway, we did, I think, after a bit of a challenging start to the process, get cyber insurance last year for the city, but it was a little bit of a challenge. So according to Chris, this leaves us, you thought we had plugged most of the holes in our.
Between this and a couple of the other packages that I have purchased or you've authorized me to purchase this past year, we should be able to take care of all the check boxes that the insurance companies would want to look at.
But we do, I believe, in the beginning of the year also have.
I'm sorry.
Didn't you say at the beginning of the year, we were going to have a test performed by an outside entity?
That's a separate package altogether.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, I know it's.
There would be a
separate package,
penetration
but you're
test where
saying
we would contract with them. They would try to find the holes in our network, both inside and outside. And then give us a list. We would address those items and then they would test again after 90 days.
Right. So that is to say, all of this is an attempt to prevent ourselves from something.
Right. I mean, I want to get as much in place beforehand so the test comes back as clean as possible. Plus, it also takes care of those before somebody else finds them.
Yeah. Will the test also reveal any places where we might have redundant protection? Is there such a thing?
There is no such thing.
So they wouldn't come back and say, oh, it's great that you have this and that, but maybe you don't need quite as much of this as you have or anything? Or that's
From
not.
what I've been putting in place, there may be some overlap,
Mhm.
but it's not like I'm gonna have a whole blanket with another whole blanket over top. It's just covering everything all over.
Got it. Okay, anyway, that was the majority of the discussion at finance.
And actually, the more holes that they have to drill down through, the more difficult it is for them to get through.
Got it. So you're saying if there are 2 blankets, that's not necessarily
I'm not saying how many blankets there are.
I think if we're talking NASA or a nuclear facility, we probably want 6, 7, 8, 15, 20.
Right.
But for the city of Williamsport, you know, couples
Well, we do
probably
have a
good.
lot of personal information in there.
Everybody does.
Mhm.
Penn College does.
Mhm.
City does.
Oh, yeah.
Every employer does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any
Well,
other, what's that?
It's a little alarming when you think about it.
Yeah. Any comments or questions on the resolution? Okay, here you can see none. Mrs. Frank on the motion for item 14.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We'll move to item 15. Mrs. Frank.
Resolution of the City Council, Lycoming County, authorizing the application for public improvement grant.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. Skip, I will welcome you, sir. Good evening.
Good evening, President Yoder and members of council. The item we're bringing forward this evening is a grant proposal that is being submitted to DCED for their Keystone Communities program. The grant we were assisted in writing the grant by Delta so that we're going after amount of $500,000, $500,000. The matching component to that is about 688,000. It would come out of our CDBG funds, some of which has already been allocated to this project at Newberry Park. And the balance that we're short will be picked up in the 2024 action plan that we're putting together right now. This is just a grant request. We're not committing to anything at this point in time. We're trying to get funding for a project. Austin White has reviewed it. It was presented to ERC yesterday morning, and I'll try to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, sir. ERC, Mr. Bider.
This did come to ERC, as Skip had said. This is just a request at this point, where the funding was coming from. He already mentioned the design that's in figure 4 is not set in stone. That was done up by Larson for us, but it could change. Councilman Mackey had suggested a couple of courts were a little bit too close just for a safety concern, but obviously that'll be something that'll be considered. Obviously, this park being in Newberry, it's critical, being that it is such a walkable neighborhood, and there are the number of kids that are over there in that neighborhood and its proximity to Jackson School to have that green space for them to be able to get out there and enjoy. Councilman Mackey, I think, brought up a very good point that I won't steal his thunder on if he would like to bring that up, having to do with facilities at parks.
Well, I mean, this is just part of a broader conversation on our parks in general. We have been putting a lot of work into these parks. And I was happy to see that there was a rest facility as part of this plan. But I think we just citywide need to start thinking about parks, specifically Brandon Park and specifically Memorial Park, on how we can get rest facilities there as well. Especially, Brandon Park. I was just over there today walking around, and those baseball fields are amazing. And when they start playing baseball there again next summer, it's going to be really busy, and we need to give the people who are there somewhere to go to the bathroom. So this is something that we need to look at. And Skip, I don't know what we'll have in mind for this park, but I would think if it's going to work for this park, it will work for Brandon, it will work for Memorial. And additionally to that, I know that they are expensive I also know we still have some money in recreation ARPA money. So I would also like to look into lights. It's my opinion that the more lights you get in these parks, the safer they're going to be. And as the seasons go on and it starts to get darker earlier, people still want to do things in parks, and having some sort of lighting that makes it safe for them to be there and to enjoy the things that we're building, I think is important. I would just encourage everybody, if you've never gone to Short Park in Loyalsock, their pickleball courts are lit up at night. I don't know when those lights shut off, if they stay on all night. I know they appear to be solar powered. But I think something along those lines, especially in this park where there's going to be a soccer field. I think again, so just a bit of a broader conversation, and, rest facilities, lighting. We're investing a ton of money into these parks, which is a great thing. And we want people to be able to use them for as long as possible. And whether that means staying for an extended period of time and having somewhere to use the restroom, or going there when it might just be starting to get dark and there's lights. So, and I also think it's a good way to deter criminal activity as well. So those were my thoughts at the meeting. So.
Ms. Mealy.
I would agree. I mean, lights, I think, are definitely a positive thing, especially if they're solar powered, so that the ongoing cost is limited for us. You know what I mean? I would also say that they should probably be wildlife friendly, in the sense, I think that's a general thing anymore, that lights point down and have very concentrated light, so they don't light the neighborhood and or the sky and confuse birds, but we should bear that in mind. But to the restrooms, I think both water access and public restrooms at parks are a wonderful idea throughout all of our public parks. I know that when I used to work at the community garden in Low School Park, little kids would come over from the basketball courts just looking for a drink from the hose that we had there, because there was no other water source in the park. And, some kids, their parents kind of effectively kick them out in the morning and tell them not to come back. You know what I mean? Like, the water access is just really important. And kids should be able to get water wherever they are. But Derek, what is our plan for maintaining and cleaning restroom facilities? Are we working with like a third party? Are we doing it in-house?
You mean in the parks?
Yeah. Because I think they're a great idea, but it's often
So,
challenging. I know.
Like at the pool, that's in-house at Memorial.
Right. Well, those are under lock and key during the winter, right?
Yeah. And you mean if we were to get new ones, you're saying? I'm sorry.
If we're putting in restrooms in Newberry, if we put restrooms in a Newberry
Right.
Park, if we were to rehab and open up the bathhouse
okay.
at Brandon,
Right.
Shaw Place,
Right.
what's our plan for
So,
taking care of those?
Councilman Mack and I actually been talking about that. We don't really have a plan yet. We have to discuss a few different things, whether it's some type of electronic entrance, or you're looking at the public safety aspect of it, but also the cleaning aspect of it too. So
Right.
we don't have an exact plan right now. We're sort of talking through that. I've talked to Scott. He's had some ideas. Councilman Mackey had a few ideas for and I've reached out to other municipalities too, to try to get a feel for what they do.
Right.
We were at wherever we were for soccer. Anyway, they had a facility there and it looked like it was lock and key when it wasn't being used. So,
because I think as a parent of young children who's been in Brandon Park, when somebody announces that they have to use the restroom, to put it mildly, it's great to provide a facility like that in a park. And I think it's absolutely should be essential, but there are also massive maintenance issues associated with that, and a lot of vandalism issues, etc. So I don't know how we deal with it, but it is something that we're considering and trying to figure out. Okay. Because the only thing worse than there not being a restroom in a park is there being a restroom and it being completely and entirely defiled. So
but it is a request we do get quite often.
Yeah.
But we do have to, it is a huge expense on top of the maintenance of it. So
Right.
we're trying to talk it through, think it through, work it through.
I wonder, I guess it wouldn't make things any better. There's nothing that we can learn from like what DCNR does. I mean, obviously not like the composting toilet thing, but like the small single stall bathrooms that are pretty, right. Hand sanitizer instead of running water or something like that, that might limit the amount of vandalism that could take place.
Yeah.
I don't know. But the other thing that I think that we should certainly consider is some sort of drinking fountain or access to drinking water if we're putting in restrooms in any of these places. Because proper hydration, especially during the summertime, is key.
Yeah, and we were even talking about that out in Shaw. For, it's getting heavily used now too with this splash park and stuff. So
Yeah,
we're looking at that. We've had a conversation even with some potential sponsors, maybe to put hand sanitizer stations, drinking fountain, et cetera. So anyway.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I guess I'm both excited about the prospect of offering those amenities and then concerned about the ongoing expense if we get caught like we did at Shaw Place with the splash park with a bunch of vandalism that we weren't expecting and don't know how to pay for. So that's all.
Oh, and I will highlight with Mr. Black in our Public Works, the cameras are up and running at Newberry, Memorial, Shaw, and the few other parks are in the works. So yes, so we're getting there to the vandalism.
Good.
And the skate park.
And the skate park, yes.
Any other comments or questions? You can see none. Mrs. Frank on the motion for item 15, please.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey.
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. You hanging? Okay.
You, the next item, you might want to,
Okay. Item 16, certificates of appropriateness from the Historic Architectural Review Board. We have one for 730 to 732 West Third Street, Mirabita Properties, replacing some windows. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. Skip, is there anything to add in particular?
there is one unique item to this. They are allowing replacement windows in this facility on the second and third floor because they are a codes issue relevant to life safety and being able to exit the bedroom areas in case of a fire or any kind of emergency situation. Instead of them being double hung windows, they will be the crank open type casement windows, and they will still look historic in their design. And that was considerable discussion with the hard board and also meeting with Gary Narr and his team to discuss the life safety issue. And because it was a codes requirement, because of the amount of renovations that are being done to this property, they have to meet the new Boca codes. So that was why this was approved the way it was approved.
Any comments or questions? Here you see none. Mrs. Frank on the motion for item 16.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Skip. We'll move to item 17, except for filing Water and Sanitary Authority meeting minutes from September 2023. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. Any comments or questions on the meeting minutes? Here you can see none. Mrs. Frank on the motion for item 17.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Mackey.
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Item 18, announcements. I'll first announce, we're having an executive session following the meeting related to matters for personnel. Our next regularly scheduled city council meeting will be on Thursday, November 9th at 7 p.m. Trade and Transit 2, third floor here. Upcoming meetings on November 6th, Monday. It's our planning commission, Tuesday, 12 p.m. Tuesday, November 7th, 11:30 a.m. Public safety, 1 p.m. Finance, 2:30 p.m. Public Works. Wednesday, November 8th, 9 a.m. is economic revitalization, 3:30 p.m. O&E pension. And in 2 weeks, Thursday, November 9th, our next city council meeting. Another reminder that our budget meetings are next month. First one will be Monday, November 13th, followed by the second session on Wednesday, November 15th, both at 7 PM right here. Any comments from members of City Council? Mrs. Katz.
Mayor, I have a question for you. It came to my attention that there's been a vehicle purchased for people in the city that they can use. Is that a fact? Where did the money come from and what kind of vehicle is it?
Sure, that was in the budget. That this year's budget that you approved
For which department?
citywide.
Citywide? And do you remember how much it was for?
I don't. I could get all that for you.
Okay.
With Tracy. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments from members of council? Any comments from members of the administration tonight? I know there's a couple comments from the public. If you would state your name and address for the record, you'll have 3 minutes. I would welcome you, and the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. My name is Gray Hogan. That's Gray, Gray like the color. I live at 770 West 4th Street, also known as the Waitman Building. I live literally above the Shamrock Bar. I'd like to request a police car marked to be parked at 770 West 4th Street in front of the Shamrock on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights starting at 9:30 PM. The Shamrock has had over 30 calls in the last 60 days, and it is just, it's ridiculous. And I literally live right above it. I'm a disabled veteran. I have general anxiety disorder. When I walk up and I see violence, it immediately triggers me and I go into an anxiety attack, and often the fight, flight, or freeze response kicks in. That's a danger to me and other people. I can tell you of at least one occasion where I was threatened to be shot with a gun and the guy didn't produce it, so the police couldn't do anything about it. It's ridiculous. This is a nuisance bar. It's been classified as such by the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board. And I know that the police can only do so much. They only have so many resources. That's why I'm asking for just a car to be parked there. It doesn't even have to be a manned car. Just put one out there. I guarantee you it'll ease a lot of my problems until such times that bar eventually gets shut down because violence happens or something like that. I'd encourage if any of you would like to talk to me about that, I'd be happy to do so after the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments from the public? Okay. Any other comments from members of the news media? I don't think any of them are here, but we'll ask anyway. Okay, take a motion and a second for adjournment.
So moved.
Second, motion and a second, all in favor? Aye. Meeting adjourned. Have a good evening, everyone.